Few world leaders have commanded as much attention, controversy, and intrigue as Vladimir Putin. Rising from obscurity in the Soviet intelligence services to becoming the undisputed leader of modern Russia, Putin has shaped the global political landscape for over 2 decades. Supporters view him as a strongman who restored Russia's power and national pride, while critics accuse him of authoritarianism, corruption, and aggression. But how did Putin rise to power? How did he transform Russia into what it is today? And what are the key controversies that define his rule? Let's explore the rise and rule of Vladimir Putin, a leader whose name is synonymous with power and control. From KGB officer to political power, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin was born in 1952 in Leningrad, now known as St. Petersburg. Growing up in the shadow of the Soviet Union, he was fascinated by intelligence work and joined the KGB, the Soviet Union's notorious security agency, in the 1970s. His career in the KGB took him to East Germany, where he worked as an intelligence officer during the Cold War. Putin's time in the KGB shaped his worldview, one built on secrecy, strategy, and the belief that strength is the key to survival. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Putin left the KGB and entered politics, aligning himself with Anatoly Sobchak, the mayor of St. Petersburg. He quickly gained a reputation as a loyal and efficient operator, helping Sobchak with foreign investments and city administration. In 1996, Putin moved to Moscow and caught the attention of President Boris Yeltsin. By 1999, Yeltsin had appointed Putin as prime minister, and when Yeltsin unexpectedly resigned on December 31, 1999, Putin became acting president. It was a moment that changed Russia's trajectory forever. The rise of Putin, restoring order or centralizing power. When Vladimir Putin took over as Russia's leader in 2000, the country was in chaos. The 1990s had been a time of economic collapse, political corruption, and a humiliating loss of global influence. Many Russians saw Putin as the man who could restore stability. One of his first major moves was to consolidate power. He targeted Russia's oligarchs, the ultra-wealthy businessmen who had gained massive fortunes during the privatization of state industries. While some saw his crackdown as an effort to curb corruption, others viewed it as a way for Putin to eliminate potential threats. Billionaire Mikhail Khodorkovsky, a vocal critic of Putin, was arrested in 2003 and sentenced to years in prison, sending a clear message to other oligarchs: support the Kremlin or face the consequences. At the same time, Putin used Russia's vast oil and gas resources to strengthen the economy. High energy prices in the 2000s allowed him to pay off national debt, increase wages, and fund large infrastructure projects. To many Russians, this economic recovery reinforced the idea that Putin was the strong leader they needed. But there was a cost. Russia's democracy began to erode. Independent media outlets were shut down, political opposition was weakened, and critics of the government often faced intimidation or worse. The era of Putinism had begun. Chechnya and the War on Terror, strong leadership or human rights abuses. One of the first major tests of Putin's leadership came in Chechnya, a small republic in southern Russia that had been fighting for independence. In the late 1990s, Chechen separatists launched attacks against Russian forces, and in response, Putin launched a brutal military campaign to crush the rebellion. The Second Chechen War, 1999 to 2009, was marked by widespread violence, destruction, and human rights abuses. Russian forces were accused of indiscriminate bombing, mass killings, and torture. However, Putin's hardline stance on Chechnya made him popular in Russia, where many citizens supported his tough approach to national security. His handling of the war helped cement his image as a no-nonsense leader who would use any means necessary to protect Russia's interests. Yet, for human rights organizations and international critics, the conflict exposed the darker side of Putin's rule, a leader willing to silence dissent with force. The Medvedev years, Putin's political maneuvering. In 2008, after serving 2 terms as president, Putin faced a constitutional limit preventing him from running for a 3rd consecutive term. Instead of stepping aside, he orchestrated a political maneuver that kept him in power. His close ally, Dmitry Medvedev, became president while Putin took on the role of prime minister. But few doubted who was really in charge. During Medvedev's presidency, 2008 to 2012. Russia saw a brief period of political openness. Relations with the West improved, and there were talks of modernization. But in 2012, Putin returned as president, winning another election amid accusations of fraud and mass protests. His return signaled a clear message: Putin was not going anywhere. Crimea and the new era of confrontation with the West. Perhaps the most defining moment of Putin's modern rule came in 2014 when Russia annexed Crimea from Ukraine. Following Ukraine's pro-Western revolution, Russian troops, disguised as local militias, took control of the Crimean Peninsula. A controversial referendum was held, and Crimea was declared part of Russia. The West responded with sanctions, and tensions between Russia and NATO escalated to levels not seen since the Cold War. While Western leaders condemned the move as an illegal land grab, Putin's popularity in Russia soared. He framed the annexation as the rightful return of Russian territory, a move that played well with nationalist sentiments. But the annexation of Crimea was just the beginning. Russia's involvement in eastern Ukraine, supporting pro-Russian separatists, led to years of conflict and further strained relations with the West. The poisoning of political opponents. One of the most disturbing aspects of Putin's rule has been the treatment of his critics. Several outspoken opponents of the Kremlin have been poisoned or mysteriously killed. Among the most notable cases, Alexander Litvinenko, 2006, a former Russian spy who accused Putin of corruption, was poisoned with radioactive polonium in London. Sergei Skripal, 2018, a former Russian double agent, was poisoned with a nerve agent in the UK, sparking a major diplomatic crisis. Alexei Navalny, 2020, Russia's most prominent opposition leader, was poisoned with Novichok, a military-grade nerve agent. He survived, but was later imprisoned upon returning to Russia. While the Kremlin denies involvement in these attacks, many believe they are part of a pattern of silencing dissent. The message is clear: challenging Putin can be dangerous. Putin's influence on global politics. Under Putin, Russia has positioned itself as a global power willing to challenge the West. From military interventions in Syria to alleged election interference in the US and Europe, Putin's government has sought to expand its influence. Russia's support for Syrian President Bashar al-Assad helped keep his regime in power during the Syrian civil war, directly opposing Western interests. Meanwhile, intelligence reports suggest that Russia has engaged in cyber warfare, disinformation campaigns, and election meddling to destabilize Western democracies. For Putin, these actions are part of a larger strategy to assert Russia's place on the world stage. For his critics, they are examples of dangerous, aggressive tactics that undermine international stability. The Ukraine War, a costly gamble. In 2022, Putin launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, a move that shocked the world and led to one of the biggest military conflicts in Europe since World War II. The war has been devastating, with thousands killed and millions displaced. Putin framed the invasion as a fight against NATO expansion and Western aggression, but the war has come at a tremendous cost. Russia has faced severe economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation, and heavy military losses. While some Russians still support the war, others see it as a disastrous mistake that has weakened Russia rather than strengthened it. Could this war mark the beginning of Putin's downfall? Only time will tell. The legacy of Putin. Vladimir Putin's rule has been defined by power, control, and controversy. He transformed Russia into a formidable global force, but at the cost of democracy, human rights, and international relations. Is Putin a savior who restored Russia's greatness, or is he an authoritarian ruler whose policies will ultimately harm the country? One thing is certain: Putin's influence on Russia and the world will be felt for generations to come. What do you think about his leadership? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into global politics.